everyone.
Thank you. Well, let me do that part. So everybody, welcome. Thanks for hanging in with the train. So tonight we're talking about communicating your idea. I'll pull up Joanna's slides here in a second and give you some things that are coming up on the schedule. And at the break, we'll hear a little bit from the emerging company folks here from the law firm about a little bit of what they do as well. What else do you want to add for anything particular for tonight?
No, this is going to be a good one, though. If you haven't heard Joanna speak, you're going to have some fun tonight. So thanks for being here. Four solid weeks. I hope this has been a helpful endeavor for your ideation. We'll just pass it over and get this started.
All right, so Joanna's been able to, we'll see if the clicker works for you. How's that?
I was telling him I don't do well with these. We don't play nice.
So we'll see how it goes. I may be back in the back pushing buttons. So Joanna's been a mentor for us for the Founder Institute a couple semesters ago. Recently changed titles, or not too long ago, but she was in charge of customer acquisition for SEO Moz. If you don't know SEO Moz, you'll hear probably a little bit about it tonight. Great tool for figuring out whether people are actually searching for what you think they should be searching for, like your product, kind of a novelty. So she's in charge of customer acquisition for SEO Moz. Great marketer, great fun to have as a mentor, and always one of my favorites as far as we don't have enough female mentors for tech in town, and Joanna's one of my favorites to do that. So please welcome Joanna Lord.
All right, so people probably say this all the time, but this is absolutely my favorite topic to talk about. By far, like when you told me, I think maybe you mentioned tools to me, the tools.
I gave you a choice.
I know, and I was like, meh. And we're a tools company. Like SEO Moz sells software, and I'm like, I'm going to talk about the idea phase. So yeah, my name is Joanna Lord. I'm the VP of Growth Marketing. So we do acquisition, I do retention, I do brand marketing. This is my 5th startup. Failed once, successful 3 times. Doing really well on this one, SEO Moz. And who knows of SEO Moz? All right, so I like it. The rest of you will work on it. We'll work on it. Nice, thank you. So yeah, communicating ideas without getting lost in details. By far, one of the most important things that anyone want to be involved with a startup, that wants to co-found, wants to be the founder of a startup, you cannot do well if you don't strengthen this skill. This is by far one of the things that you need to nail. And I did it really, really bad for a lot of years, and then I had a lot of people tell me I was really, really bad at it, and enough times that I was like, all right, I'm going to get better at it. So what I'm going to run through today is really top-level conceptual things, and I talk fast, I get really excited, I might run around a little bit. If there's questions you guys have, I think there's a little time for Q&A, but also my email will be available to you guys, and I did it for the Founders Institute. I still email back and forth with a lot of them. I'm very passionate about the Seattle startup scene. I've been down in LA for 5 years. It's not as welcoming a scene as the Seattle startup scene, and so I really do think it's important. If you guys have questions, if something didn't make sense, or you want me to go down deeper on one of the things I talk about, absolutely email me and ask me. So anyways, let's just jump right in. And the clicker, it works. Okay, so communicating your ideas, it's harder than it sounds. Absolutely. Because you say to yourself, I know what I'm doing. I might be disrupting my life. I'm starting this company. I know the idea. Everyone's going to understand it. It's really easy to understand. Let me tell you. Blah, 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 blah. And it makes no sense because in your head it is this idealistic version of what the market might need, or what an investor might put money into, or what a co-founder might jump on board with. So it's way harder than it seems. And you tend to go into this blah, blah, blah hole of death. And you've seen it before, right? Because you're like, I'm going to test this out. I've got this idea. I have a cocktail. I'm with my best friend. I'm going to tell him my idea. And then you sit down. You're like, so I think I'm going to do this. And then they're like, oh my gosh, tell me more. That's so exciting. And you're like, well, I'm going to bring it to market. And like, it's a lot like Pinterest, but it's kind of like Pinterest, but it's got this spin, and it's going to have video because everyone loves video, and then we're going to share it, and it's got a lot of content in it, and the content's really exciting. And you just go on this circle, and it's these buzzwords that in your head make sense, but you haven't found anything substantial. You haven't found the soapbox that makes it stand out. So we're going to talk about how you can avoid this today. Winning startups have beautiful stories. So I know that technically we're talking about ideas today. They're the same thing now. Not always the case. You could have a great idea and not a bad story back in the day, and it might have been a good enough idea to carry you through until it got to the point that you had traction, and until you got a team around it that carried it through. It's just not that way anymore. The barriers are down. Everyone is sharing so many ideas. Everyone is much better at telling stories. People want to hear better stories. Their bar has raised. So if you want your startup to stand out, you better figure out not just the idea and how you're going to explain it, but what is that contextual story that helps everyone else hold on and get real excited about what you're doing. It's not serendipity, and it is absolutely science. And I am of the creative world. I am of this organic, beautiful world. Like, I follow my dreams. I love that sort of idea. Like, if you stick with something hard, like long enough, it's going to work. If you just push through, people will get it. You know, it's not like that anymore. And I think that the serendipity part is by far one of the biggest myths that exist in startups, which is this idea that if I have enough passion and I express it to the right person, it'll work. I might get a bunch of no's along the way, but it will work. And again, too many people are in the space. Like, startup isn't a novelty anymore. It's a saturated, competitive field, and it's going to continue to be so because tech is sexy. Startups are sexy. We have more tools available than ever. People are meeting like this, smart people in groups helping each other get there. So it's not serendipitous anymore. You can actually tweak your story. Right now you have a story. Some of them are better than others. We're going to talk about that today. But like you can pull levers. You can actually say to yourself, if I ask this right question, I'm going to change that word. I'm going to change that adjective. I'm going to change that delivery. I'm going to change my facial expression, my hand expression, the place I deliver it, the medium I deliver it in. And then it's beautiful. So we'll talk about that science today. So how do you communicate? All right, there's a lot of basics. Some of them you know more, probably more as brand storytelling tenets, but I'm going to show how they can be applied during that ideation phase. So let's run through some. Obviously, passion. When I say passion, I don't mean like you really believe in what you're doing. I would hope all of you really believe in it, or maybe when you come, some of you are still seeking your ideas, and when you come across them, or you have them in the middle of the night or something, the passion is there. I get that. I mean when you start to deliver your idea verbally. Too many founders forget about the passion. They're like, no, I'm going to lead with statistics. I'm going to lead with market. I think you guys talked about market research and market validation. And that's great, and there's a time and place for that. But not when you're trying to really refine your story. Because if you lead with too much science, too much specific need, too much this is a good idea because, and you strip out the reason you started doing it in the first place, no one's going to give a shit. Just no one's going to care. Because they're going to be like, I don't know, they're going to listen to you, and it's going to sound great, and they're going to walk away, and they're going to be like, I don't know if they're really into it. I mean, it sounds like a good idea, but I just don't know. I just don't get the vibe that like they really want it. So don't strip that out too much. You're going to meet with a lot of people that are going to be like, you seem really enthusiastic, but I'm not quite sure what you're doing. That doesn't mean that you should strip the enthusiasm out. It means that you need to get better at saying what you're doing and leave the enthusiasm in. So you're going to find me talk about that a lot, that idea of passion. It should be a showstopper. It should be something that when you come into a room and you're like, yeah, I've got this idea, I'm pretty excited about it, and you go into it, that no one can look away. And that's something you train yourself to get good at. Even if you're an introvert, you train yourself to get good at. Even if you're the CTO, you train yourself to get good at. So the passion is a huge part of that. This is my favorite concept. How many people are familiar with Simon Sinek's Golden Circle Theory? It's a TED Talk, right? Because I talked about, well, you had known it before, but I talked about it at the Founders Institute. I'll send this out in links, or maybe you guys get to see this, but #1 TED Talk to go see. I mean, we all love TED Talks. Simon Sinek, Golden Circle Theory. Changed my life as a marketer, changed my life as a startup junkie, because what he talks about is too many times startup founders focus on the what and the how, because those are really hard, right? What the hell am I trying to do, and how am I different? Those are very valuable. Nowhere near as valuable as the why. So here's an example. At SEO Moz, for a number of years, I marketed a website that talked about the what. We sell SEO software. Should we call it software? Should we call it tools? Should I, is it useful? Is it simple? Is it effective? I'm focused on all of the kind of the what's. And then I like evolved, and I was like, I'm going to talk about the how. How do we do it? We have all this great data. It's proprietary. You can't get it anywhere else. It's super exciting. It's scalable. It's easy to use. Great reporting. And I'm like, I'm getting it. I'm winning, guys. I'm going to beat all the competition. And then we realized our site delivered very well on our idea, which was that we want to sell simple SEO software. But when everyone else rose up, and we were in a field, a very saturated field, no one stuck out. And we were like, how are we going to stick out? And we should talk about the why. Why the hell do we build SEO software? We truly do believe there's a lot of junk on the internet. And if you are a company and you're selling something great and you're doing it wonderfully, we want you to rank first. We believe in better marketing. That's why I wake up in the morning. I wake up in the morning not because I want to sell SEO software, it's because I believe that better marketing is more important. That is a mission I want to stand behind. How do we do it? Well, we have this great software and it has this great data and it does all these things. So if you can think of the purpose, right? We'll talk about UVP in a second, your unique value proposition. That's different than this. It's the actual why. Hello there. How's it going? Yeah, so the why, right? Watch the, I mean, he does such a better job about it than I could ever do, but it's an amazing TED Talk. Definitely worth the 10 minutes of your time. We come back to this often. We get in a room and we're like, great, we just bought this local product, but why, right? So that's great. On to the UVP. How many people are familiar with unique value propositions? It's a very marketing heavy term. Excellent. Excellent, jumping right in, I like it. So unique value proposition is your differentiating factor as a startup. I'm sure that you guys have talked a little bit about that over the last 4 weeks, and you're going to continue to refine that. Very often when you have a good idea, it doesn't necessarily, this is going to sound harsh, but we're among friends, it might not be that unique, right? I have a fashion voting mobile app I'm building. There's like 12 of them out there. One just got like $100 million in funding, so that sucks. You know, like, it's not unique. So I need to think to myself, what's my UVP? What's going to be unique about that mobile app that is enough to get traction? And then I need to think to myself, how am I going to explain that unique value proposition without sounding pompous and arrogant and aggressive? You don't ever want to sit down with someone and be like, we are so different. What we're doing is way different than what's out there, because then it makes it sound like you're not even a validated market. So there's a real fine line that you have to dance, and we can talk about that in Q&A with your specific startup ideas, but there's a fine line between always leading with the UVP, never having a coffee with anyone, or never making a web page, or never writing an email where your UVP should never be missing, because it's literally the reason you're here. But there's a fine line in delivering it effectively without sounding really ridiculous. You hear this all the time. You're like, we're revolutionizing microblogging. It's totally different than what Twitter did. You know, like, it's kind of, you're just like, I don't really want to know you. So you have to think about that. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But UVP is important. Your current state. So I get pushback on this sometimes when I talk about this. In startups that I advise, and I'm an advisor on a startup in the event space, which is a very competitive field, right? Like Eventbrite, these sorts of things. And they're in Australia, they're coming to the US. I'm very adamant about them being very clear every time they talk to someone, or time that, you know, if they want to get picked up in press, or they want to get someone else to join the team, or they're looking for other investment, that they are very clear in the first couple sentences about their current status. Many of you, I heard, you're in the ideation phase, right? And some of you might be saying to yourself, like, I'm not really going to bring that up when I talk to people because I want them to make me think I'm a little further along than I am, or I'm a little embarrassed I'm just in the ideation phase. Or maybe you built something but it doesn't really have users, so you kind of like wash over that when you're explaining what you're doing, because you're like, I don't want them to ask me if I have users and then tell them it's just me and my mom, you know. So you kind of skip over it. The more comfortable you can get with wherever you are in these phases, the more confident you can be in you knowing that the road is long and that you're just right here and you got to get all the way over there. The more effective you get at explaining that to someone, the more they're going to love you. It's authenticity in an idea, right? And a lot of people, a lot of startups, when I meet with them and I'm just like, they have this great idea, they deliver it well, they get me excited. And then at the end, the first question I ask them is like, so where are you with it? And you see them like they're like, oh, well, you know, we're just kind of brainstorming, you know, and you're just like, why are you shrinking up? I mean, it's an awesome idea. So there's something about the confidence of the way you deliver the idea. The confidence comes in getting comfortable with where you are. So think about where you are in the current state. Go learn the phases. Go read blogs, and I can send some links around. But there's a lot of phases to this. This is a long haul. This is a long-term play. You're getting in a marriage with this idea. So don't be, you know, everyone likes the first couple of dates. That's a fun time. Don't like shy away from admitting it, you know? So think about that when you're thinking about how you're going to explain it. This one, aspirational, nothing bothers me more. Nothing bothers me more than when someone has this great idea and they're starting to explain it, or maybe they write a blog post about it, and I get to the end, and it's like, wah, wah. It's like, but what is it going to do? Where are you taking me? What are you promising me? What are you revolutionizing? What are you disrupting? Where's the innovation? take me someplace great. That's why I'm talking to you. I'm talking because I want to go someplace great. So in your story, when you're starting with the passion, you get into the nitty-gritty, you explain how you're different, you start to talk about where you are, talk about where you're going. Don't be afraid to get real crazy in that long-term vision. Don't be afraid to be like, you know, I'd love to have 100,000 people on this platform. I think it'd be great. I'd love to. We just bought a company. The guy told me he wants to take over Brazil. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, 2014 is going to be the year we take over Brazil. I was like, I don't have any idea what that means, but I'm super excited about your aspirations. So let's come up with a roadmap for that. You know what I mean? But it's in local marketing, and apparently Brazil is very savvy in local marketing. So if we get that, we get this huge share of market. But I love the way he slips it in. He slips it in, and I'm just like, okay. So you shouldn't end your story too rigid. It shouldn't be, your idea should never end with, I'm doing this because of X, and I think it will be really great. It should never end like soft like that. It should always end with like, I think we can really disrupt this space. Because well, your ideas should really disrupt the space. And even if they're softer, even if they're more like, yeah, there's a lot of competitors in the field, and you just want to do something a little bit different, you know? A lot of people have made a lot of money off of just serving a need that is just a little different than someone who's done it well. I'll give you the example with this board I'm on, Attendly. They don't want to take over Eventbrite. That would be crazy. Eventbrite has too much market share. But what they do believe in is they think that Eventbrite has rested on their laurels for too long. They don't think they're delivering great features, and they don't think they focus on the people behind events. And so they want to be a company that focuses on the people behind the events, and they're disrupting the space by having a pay what you can pricing model. Crazy, right? Like, what? Revenue? But anyways, we'll deal with that later. I'm more excited about the disruption they want to do, which is this idea that they believe they can have a software that serves people having events and somehow get the events to be more visible to the world. That's an aspirational thing. They want to bring attention to good causes through a software that serves signing up for those causes. I think that that's awesome. And we work on that story. How can they end with that and catch people enough that they don't leave without knowing? And the reason aspirational, and I'm sure you guys get this, but like, the reason you like go like this is because people believe in people. People don't believe in companies anymore. That's a lost cause. I don't believe, I don't believe in Zappos, the company. I don't care at all. Do I believe in Tony? Do I believe in what he's trying to do with customer service? Do I believe in what he's trying to do in revolutionizing consumer-driven efforts? Absolutely. And I believe that he's doing something really great there. So they want to, you have to leave them with a reason to believe that you're the person they want to book another coffee with. They'll remember you, and then they'll get excited about your idea. So that's the aspirational side. Some of it sounds pretty easy, because you're like, oh, that's pretty soft. I can figure that out. I'll just go home and I'm gonna like write down some questions and then some answers, and then I have like the perfect story. It's not gonna be that easy. And the reason is because the audience is. So everything I just told you, you do kind of adjust it based on the people you're speaking to. And I think that Dave and I are gonna overlap a little bit on this, because we talked a little bit about what's in our presentations, but it's great because going over things a couple times is good. So I'm gonna talk about some of the common audiences that everyone in this room, as we move forward with your ideas, that you're going to face. And isn't this the creepiest stock photo? You're laughing, right? So I get way too excited about stock photos when I'm putting these presentations together, and I thought this was one of the creepiest things I've ever seen. So I obviously included it in this deck. Okay, so the first one, I had world, and I intentionally crossed it off because the world is now made up of influencers. Everyone in this room has to care a hell of a lot more about influential people than you ever thought you were going to when you got into startups. And how you identify influencers, the tools you can use, because there's a lot out there, we can talk about later. I can send out some links. There's some great ways out there to identify influencers. I'm talking about how do you speak to them once you've caught their attention. So you need to put it in context of the landscape. Here's the thing about influencers. A lot of people care what they say, but they only care what they say because they're considered influential in a space. So if your idea is in, I'm always bad at examples when I'm speaking, robotics. If your idea is in robotics and you go find someone who writes all the time on robotics and has a huge following in robotics, you can't go to them and tell them how you're going to disrupt the space without putting it into context with something that they already are an expert in. You're going to say to them, you talk all the time about how, robotics technology has stagnated and how it needs to be disrupted, and here's something about that. Or you always talk about how the US is failing compared to these other countries. You have to really, it's kind of the both of these. You have to fluff their feathers, like I care what you talk about, and then you have to put it into context for them, because if not, they don't have time for you. That's just it's the art of influential people, right? Find your disruptive angle. So again, it can't be necessarily like your UVP, but more of that other side, like what would they write an article about if they were about to blog about you? If they were going to go back into their 500,000 person RSS, write a piece about you, what's their first paragraph? Anytime you meet with an influencer, you should have it written in your head, and you deliver it 3 or 4 times over coffee so that you're like, yeah, I mean, no one's even writing about this. I mean, whoever writes about this, that's going to be serious. They're going to be, I mean, can you write? And they're just like, oh my God, I'm totally going to write about this. So you have to seed it for them, you know, they don't have the time. And then making it visual. So this is really, I wouldn't have said this a year ago, and this is more important than ever. Every idea you have should have a corresponding visual model. And it can't be a boring model. It can't be like one I'd make in PowerPoint, which I've done in the past. That does not go over well. It needs to be something beautiful, something outside the box. So we have this idea around inbound marketing. I'm going to use an SEO Moz example. What is inbound marketing? If I'm going to go pitch it to an influencer to write about inbound marketing, I want to have trademarked with your company or your name or something that is proprietary to you, some sort of visual aid that they can just plug into that post, that they can just tweet out, that they can go pin on Pinterest, that goes back to you guys, that you guys are now forging the way with this model, which hopefully gets adopted as the idea. Does that make sense? So like inbound marketing, what is inbound marketing? We could either write out 10 channels that are inbound marketing, or I could create a beautiful visual Venn diagram about how they overlap, and content is the nucleus, and oh my God, isn't it sexy? And people are going to take the visual, and they're going to run with it, and that visual becomes a very easy way for you to explain your idea. And you're going to have it all over your sites, and it's going to get linked back to you, and it goes back to SEO and all those beautiful things. So think about a visual aid that helps explain what you care about, even if it's something as simple as, you know, why am I doing this? And it's like, you know, your idea in a quote. You know, like on Pinterest, you see all the quotes that are so hot right now, and it's just on a beautiful color. If it's something as simple as that, I believe in X, make it visual, make it pop. And then fluffing the feathers, as we all know with influencers and pretty much anyone in the press or anyone that you want to care about you that can help spread your idea, you need to make it relevant to them, and you need to make them feel good for covering it. So do you have a cause attached to your idea? Do you have a story that is human-based behind your idea? Make sure to share those with influencers so that they really care about helping you. Again, you, not your company. All right, the customer. So this one's the easy one, hopefully, for most of us. Not easy to get customers. That's not what I'm saying. That's actually very hard. But how can you best put your foot forward with customers? Here's my idea. So unique value proposition. Again, you should never have a page on your site or never really be trying to sell someone on your idea, like a customer that you want to actually pay you for anything, without saying how you are uniquely going to give them value that they can't get anywhere else. That's kind of it's an easy thing to understand. So the UVP should be there. The benefits for them outside the UVP, do I save you time? Do I make it easier? Do I make it more scalable? Do I make it more beautiful? Those are the adjectives. Those are the side supplementary adjectives that you give that kind of convince the customer that not only is it going to be uniquely valuable, you can't get it somewhere else, but we also do all this other great stuff. So it's the list of benefits. It's your bullet points on your product doors, right? You should be able to verbalize those effectively without sounding like you're reading off a product page. Trust signals. So what about it? Most of you won't have a lot of trust signals. Common trust signals are things like, we have 10,000 customers. Well, no one in the room has 10,000 customers. For a long time, SEO Moz didn't have 10,000 customers. So what trust signals did we use? Quotes from our beta testers that tried things, that told us they're really excited about what we're building and they can't wait to see the next version. So that sort of testimonial, true human contact. Videos of people using it, saying how excited they are. Pictures today are more of a trust signal than they've ever been. If you get together with a bunch of people and you're working on, you have a picture of you working on something and you put that on your about page, it is more now than ever before a trust signal that you guys are doing cool shit. And people want to see that. Customers need to see that before they get excited about your idea and what you're doing. Even if you don't have a product yet. Even if you just have up a placeholder website where you're like, coming soon. Build out the about page. Talk about you. Give it a story. Give it pictures. Give it trust signals. Make it about what's coming. not just about, I don't have this, right? Nothing's more sad than a really like empty site that's like coming soon, and then they check back 3 months later, it's like coming soon. It's really anticlimactic. So. And then offer them supporting resources. This gets back into inbound marketing. I can talk a whole day on this. Ultimately, if you have any time to provide a resource to your customer that isn't while you're building out your product or you're figuring out your idea, maybe it's a checklist, maybe it's a guide, maybe it's a visual, maybe it's just your contact. Hey, do you want to talk more about this? Email me. Whatever it can be, you can offer them a resource. Customers love to feel like you want it, they want to know that you'll give them value before they give you money. Talk about loyalty. That's gold these days, absolute gold. And that can happen in the ideation phase. You don't need to promise them a product yet. All right, so the investor. Oh, the monies. The monies. This is an important conversation. Dave can talk about this way better than me. But this is like my really sad attempt. This is what I took I've gotten angel investing. We've got a great round last year for Brad Feld at Foundry. I've been in the room. I've done a lot of conversations. I've also been at the table when other people are pitching people, and I've seen what can go wrong. Here are the really, really, really simple things. If you're going to talk to someone, even if it's a friend and family round, and you want to get their attention, the purpose would be nice, right? So the why, what are you solving for? I'm sure you guys have talked a lot about that. The market and opportunity. It sounds like you had a whole week on that. You notice I didn't talk about that as much in some of the other pitches, because I really do think that sometimes founders overuse that on the wrong audiences, and it turns them off. They're like, did they just throw a stat at me about like 2014 possible revenue, or potential opportunity? I don't know anything about that. Investors do, and they want to hear it, and they need to see it. Your unique value proposition, we talked about that. The team, even if you're a team of one, what are your ideas around the team? What support do you have outside of building the product? I am amazed, you read the Mark Suster blogs and you read Fred Wilson, and they talk a lot more about who do they invest in. And it usually comes down to this idea that like someone had a great idea, they were also really, I felt they were supported, they had a great mentorship circle, or they had great connections. People, this is, Dave, mention Dave, right? Mention this class. That's going to be valuable. You will win out over the next coffee meeting that doesn't have that in their pocket. And then the passion, which is pretty clear, but again, you get nervous in those conversations, you temper it, you're like, I don't want to seem like I'm crazy, and I'm too excited, and there's a time and place to pull back, but overall, I think that people pull back too much. I think they try to be more legit than they are, and they lose that human part of why they're excited about this idea. All right, last one, employee number 2. This is a conversation. We need to write more blog posts about this. How the hell do you get anyone to do this with you? This is really hard. Oh my gosh, finding a co-founder is really, really hard. Finding the first engineer that wants to work with you is really hard. So what do you talk about? Lead with passion, lead with the solution. What am I building and why is it different? That usually gets them excited because a lot of people want to do disruptive things. The opportunity for them, hey, not only are you going to be like employee number 2, but this is my hands-off area. This is your area. Whatever you think this can be is as big as it can be. I mean, don't be inauthentic, but if you really feel that way about someone, don't be afraid to say that to them, right? So the challenges, be really honest about your weaknesses, both with the idea and yourself. Never start any relationship where you aren't completely transparent. This is an absolute marriage, right? So, and being aspirational. So we talked a lot about that. That's really key in that employee number 2 conversation. Oftentimes it's like the only thing that can carry you through some of those long nights. All right, so that's the gist of it, right? Keep it simple, stupid. I'm not telling you all to kiss each other, that'd be awkward. Keep it simple, stupid. It's actually not that hard, but you do have to put time in early. You have to stay consistent. It's amazing to me. I talk to someone, I go have a coffee with someone because they set me up. They tell me their idea. I'm like, wow, that's real cool. So you're talking about social authority metrics. That's really interesting. And then I go to an event, and I'm talking to someone. They're like, do you know so-and-so? I was like, oh, yeah, yeah. And they're like, yeah, they're working on a influencer social analytics platform. And I was like, really? They told me they were trying to solve for social authority metric. It's really different. Good luck. I mean, if you see this town and these conversations, and you don't have it nailed down and you're not consistent, it's going to be really hard for you to build a tribe of people that are excited about what you're doing. So stay consistent, and on the flip side of that, to completely counter myself, continuously revisit it in case it needs to evolve. So the number one thing that I didn't do early that I wish I did more of is when I talked with someone and they told me that it confused them, I got bullish, and I was like, they don't get it. I'm talking to the wrong person. I'm like, I'm going to talk to this person. They're really smart. No, they had a legit confusion. I have a confusion in my idea, my delivery, my execution. So take that, learn from it. Sometimes you don't always adjust, but early on, take as much help as you can get. Is kind of my approach to it. So continuously revisit it. Even us, the SEO mods, I sit down, God, every 3 weeks, 4 weeks with my brand team, and I'm like, here's the feedback we're getting. We're saying this. Someone wants to know where they can find it, and I've put it on my product tour, so clearly something I'm saying around that story, me explaining that is not working. So let's revisit that. Let's go do, user testing. Let's go do some high-touch customer validation around that idea, right? We do it all the time. And then put your weight behind it. It's kind of like one of my last slides. Probably one of the scariest things that I think has happened in this very competitive startup scene that we're all excited about is that you're afraid to put your weight behind the idea that really does excite you, because you're like, well, I don't know, maybe that's not the idea, right? Maybe when I talk about it, someone else will say something, and that will be a better idea, and I'll leave that idea behind. And I think that while it's always great to think that an idea can become many great ideas, and it will pivot often, that's how you make it, right? You pivot often, you're flexible, you're agile. If you don't put your weight behind it early, if you don't come up with a really good one and put your weight behind it, it's kind of hard to test it. And if you don't test it early, you won't know if you should leave it behind. You won't know if it needs to pivot. So if you dance around your idea, if you're just like, you say it one way, you say it another way, you kind of change it a little bit, and you're like, I don't know, if you aren't putting your weight behind it, it's going to be really hard to know if it's the one that sticks. And that's what all of this is about, is really testing it early so that you find the right one to put your weight behind. And then have some fun with it. That's my favorite slide. So don't take it all so seriously. Dave might smack me for saying this, but I think he'd agree. We have a lot of ideas at SEO Moz. We float a lot of them by a lot of people. Some of them were really bad over the last 3 years. And I mean, I had a startup that failed, and I thought that idea was awesome. And I think back to it, and I'm just like, I wish I'd had a little bit more fun with it. Like, I had these great ideas around it, but I never really went to those. I tried to keep it too legit, too scientific, and too effective, like exactly what I think someone would want to hear to give me a lot of money and make me rich. And when I let all that go, it didn't have any heart behind the idea, so no one got behind it, and it failed. So don't be afraid. There's a balance there. You have to have some fun with the idea. So that's it. That's mine. Yeah.
Thank you. So questions for Joanna, and then
I scare you with my
Nice lights.
yeah. Huh?
Nice.